there's so many people out there who would say, yeah, I can teach you this and pay me this much. I'll teach you this in a weekend. And then you can go off and do it.
It's irresponsible, really. It's really I agree that it felt very disrespectful. It felt like a real knife to my heart to just be like, how could you ever think that I would do that? How could you ever think that that was okay to ask me?
All right. Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to the Shut Up and Heal podcast. I am your host, Dr. D. Some of you may know me as your ancestral healing coach. Others may know me as a founder of a wellness tech startup. And for some of you, you may just know me as your good old sis. Now, we are excited to be here today, and we are partnering with Amarize that matches individuals to alternative and complementary wellness practitioners. Now, matching you based on many aspects, such as your wellness needs, personality, and more, to ensure that you get the right modality and practitioner at the right time of your journey. Now, with that, we are joined by one of the dopest practitioners out there, in my opinion. Now, Raynelle comes to us here. She's also an entrepreneur, mom, everything here, founder of Rino Consulting Solutions, a nature-based coaching and consulting firm that empowers leaders to be able to embrace their true identity and self. Now, Raynelle is a certified personal coach. She is also an expert when it comes to things environmental and science. She really merges this together to create a unique experience to allow you to better understand and reach into your identity, harnessing a lot of the energies of the land, utilizing elements, and more. She is really guided by her spiritual mentors and elders and kind of brings this unique blend of everything. Raynelle and I have conversations all the time about so many different things, and we just thought, let's just get on this podcast and start talking. I mean, really, really, really talking about stuff. And this conversation kind of stemmed from before the holidays. We were chatting about how packaged a lot of things are today, especially in the States, Canada, I think a lot of Europe too, and our feeling and our wellness is also pretty packaged. So right now, I really want to just kind of dive straight in and think, because you've been doing this work for a while, nature-based coaching for years, deep community work. How do you continue to define your coaching in a way that resists that temptation to package it like we're seeing a lot happening in the wellness space?
Yeah, thank you for having me here. It's always such a good time with you, digging into some thoughts and even opinions or experiences that kind of shape what we're seeing out there, and just being here for each other as we're providing our service and experiencing what we're experiencing with our clients. And I think a lot of how I understand the power of providing a space for people to process and discover themselves, it's a very personal journey for us practitioners. And when we talk about packaging, there's a certain point that you have to be able to know how to tell your story that relates to why we do what we do and how we do what we do to get somebody to, achieve some of the goals they want for themselves. And it has to fit within consumerism, right? Because we are a service. We're a thing that people have to know about. But it's so deeply personal that I find it's hard, especially for entrepreneurs in the healing space, to get to a point where they're comfortable with packaging and repackaging and talking about it in a way that isn't salesy and, in this area of just I just want to make money doing it, where that's really not what transformation is, right? It's the intention is not to suddenly become a 6-figure or millionaire being an amazing healing person that serves. It's very rarely can that happen, but I just find that it's about energy exchange. Whatever energy you put into your want and your understanding of this is who you are for the world versus here's what I can do to be successful. Walking with those are two different intentions to walk with. And I think I'm always paying attention to how people are presenting themselves in a way that can I hear where this comes from? Can I hear your story? Do I know that you too have felt the pain that I felt and found a way through it from a personal lens so that you also are at a place of giving versus like, this is probably another topic for a different podcast, but like when we lead with our wounds, right? We're doing work that is like our agenda is in the room instead of the client's agenda, right? So we do have to get to a point of like being able to be of service in full service where we can discern when we show up for our clients, the people we serve, we're not blending our healing into theirs. Like we are able to fully give. So it's such a nuance to kind of like dig into yourself and say like, here's how I'm going to talk about what I do and how I do it. And to a point of like, now here's how you can work with me, right? Like that has to happen. Like how else would you find anyone to work with unless like you open your shop, you all do all the things, but it's an interesting nuance and dynamic when we're talking about our gifts being that of the service, our healing properties, our ability to help people move through their energy. And at the end of it, it's just like, does this come from a particular story of you? Like with respect to the practitioner, can I hear that the practitioner went through something that from that experience is now at a place to share that experience, share that knowledge, share that process that they went through?
I really like that you're touching on this because I feel that, especially during COVID, we started seeing a shift happen where all of a sudden the stillness gave a lot of people time and space to feel, to think, to be present. And with that, a lot of our wounds were highlighted. A lot of the need to heal, like you had to look at yourself a lot of times during COVID because there was nothing else to do, not too many distractions in the way. Now, from that, I'm hearing a consistency in quite a lot of stories of folks, especially around this healing and wellness space here, where we saw a huge surge happen with folks that are identifying and labeling themselves as a healer or as a wellness practitioner. A lot of people got certified in a lot of different things. We see practices open, modalities surge. Now the newest hashtag is like self-care, mental health and things. There's so many people that came from a place of they were acknowledging some of their wounds and maybe they bumped into something that worked for them in that season and they're running with it. And now it's like, this is what I do. This is how I help others do that. Now, you and I know, and so many folks out there probably even listening know that that's not what makes you a healer. That is not necessarily what pushes so many people to get into that specific modality or get into the space or become a practitioner. That when it comes to life, the need to slow down and those wounds coming up, you have to be present in that. You need to be a student for quite a long time before we even consider what modality, how does that work, and then other things that factor into that, your ancestral background and things when it comes to the practices that you do or even share and how that's shared. So I think I'm saying a lot of this to say that it's hard these days to what I feel like find true authentic healers. Being a healer is not something that you give yourself. It's not a title that you give yourself. It's truly something that's given to you over time. And it is a great blessing, but also a great like burden to have. So I think that language around what a healer is, what is healing, the healing services people provide, I realize that we can talk about this stuff forever. But I'm kind of saying a lot of this to say, like, you said a term that stuck with me really well. You called it franchise healing. And I have not been able to let go of that, where it's like a lot of what's happening today is franchise healing. And you and I have been practicing before COVID happened. So we remember the huge shift that happened literally between 2019 and we fast forward to 2021. Spaces that like we got pushed out of, we got cursed out of and stuff all of a sudden are dominated by people who started something yesterday. So that like franchise healing to me implies that one size fits all approach. Can you share some examples of how this you see this showing up, and also like how do you work with this? Like, how are you staying sane through all of this?
So franchise healing really came up in my mind because, we have a tendency to just want the answers, right? Like we just want to know how to fix the thing, and let me just order the value meal from the place that packages it well, and and then I'll be good. And doesn't matter who's in, the practice, it's the modality that is so enamoring. And I want to feel the transformation and the thingy, whatever. The thing that happens after that we know of is the long journey, right? Like franchise meaning we're just having all of these pop-ups of healing without really even understanding like what power that has, the historical context to like the people adopting these modalities. Like how does that actually like resonate with your own DNA? Because this stuff doesn't just like come from the certification from another person who got certified from this other thing, and then probably this like white led certification program that was like, I'm going to institutionalize this and people are going to have to conform to my, requirements to get certified, and they can't elevate until they go through this institution of curriculum and practicum, and then they're good to go. It's like, I don't really think that that's really how energy works, or how like the feeling of moving through like your trauma or your grief is going to happen because you all of a sudden got this thing that thousands of people got, that paid thousands of dollars for a weekend for. Like that's not the full complete context of like being able to be of service of such a deep responsibility for somebody else's life. Because that's essentially what we're talking about, right? We're holding people in a space to move them through life and help them go through that, like be with them when some major, like what if you had to let go of all of the things that you thought you were? That's such a tender place to meet somebody and witness. So there's no amount of money or curriculum or practicum hours that can cultivate an individual's ability to like see someone lose their shit and see them through it, or understand like, that something moving in the body is related to something, a situation that you're stuck in. Like to make those connections, you have to really let go of all of these sort of like white supremacy culture aspects of doing your quote unquote work, and just let the thing happen. And on the other aspect of like franchise healing, it's like usually you don't know who the healer is in the community. There's no banner, there's no brand. It's just the person is like in front of you, and you're just like, I don't know why I need to talk to you, or I don't know why we're in this relationship, but something feels like we need to, so those are some of the aspects that we tend to, the external world dictate, what is defined as somebody who does healing work or has gifts or power, where in actuality it's just putting the intention out there that you want to be better and do better, you want your life to alter and change, is like, these healers might show up in different ways, you know? And for a moment in my like mid-20s, like my healer was my music. I sat and listened and buffered, and I didn't want to do anything else because I was going through so much. And at that moment, it was just the ability to listen to the music that was coming to me, and they were sending me the lyrics that were sending me the aha moments. Right? Like, what modality is that? I don't know what modality is that music. Like, so opening up ourselves to the possibility that, you know, healing can happen in so many different forms. And, you know, I'm just really cautious and discerning of how quickly pop-up healing spaces come, and just a surge of just all of this. Yes, we needed that during the pandemic. We had an existential crisis, right? We had spiritual crisis come up. And so who are the people who are supposed to help us through that? You know, I think, like you mentioned, we both were doing this work pre-pandemic lockdown. And that was a lot of because of our personal journeys getting to there. It's just the pandemic amplified the need because the distractions of this capitalist world started to not work anymore. They were not available. You know, even though, like, yes, I don't think we've learned our lesson
Absolutely not.
fully.
No.
So I think this is really why franchise healing is something to just be aware, like, that is what's happening. Franchising your modality and franchising, like, somebody asked me, like, I'm moving to Hawaii. Can you teach me how to do healing hikes? Because I want to do it over there. I was like, no, just no, that's not how I do things. That's not what this is. This is not franchise healing. You can't.
Blows my mind. That's
Yeah, it blows.
wild.
As
But you know, this is what healing has come to, and I'm gonna air quote healing for so many folks. This is the original. What we're doing has been the original medicine for so many generations. Our ancestors, like, there's so much around the work that we do, and to have somebody step in, honestly, it's disrespectful, to be honest, to
yeah.
step in and say that. It's like you have so many popularized and gentrified practices out there that so many people are doing and mass certifying, and that are and look nothing, come nowhere close to the same region or spaces as the original people who have been doing it for generations and generations before. I'm going off now a little bit because this stuff hurts my heart. It aches me. And I think what also throws me is the fact that we, as people who are indigenous or ancestral to certain practices, are continuing to give our power out. You said something that I feel like a lot of people don't say. You said no, but there's so many people out there who would say, yeah, I can teach you this and pay me this much. I'll teach you this in a weekend. And then you can go off and do it.
It's irresponsible, really. It's really I agree that it felt very disrespectful. It felt like a real, like, knife to my heart to just be like, how could you ever think that I would do that? How could you ever think that that was okay to ask me? Like, do I give off this thing that I'm just, like, spreading this around? Like, I could teach you how to hold a space like that. It's like, and you haven't even gone on a hike with me. That is wild. That is wild.
Oh my goodness.
And you know, I think it goes back to the story. I'm not gonna go into a session with a healer where I don't know what their story is and what brought them to do the work that they do. And I can get the references, I could get the recommendation to see them, but I also have to feel them. Like,
Well,
I knowing that this work is you know, the journey of, like, being part of the diaspora of people who don't even have access to the knowledge of how my relatives, my ancestors did anything. Like I have to dig for that. No, there's no elder teaching me a specific way that my family did it. I'm having to do research. I'm having to like dig into whatever archives, not even have the chance to go back to my ancestral lands to actually, you know, feel what that's like and to know, where these things come from for me. But I think that's why it's so important to do the self-discovery of what modality is actually attuned to you. And, you know, with a grain of salt, it's like at the end of the day, we're all kind of talking about the same thing, like the energy and the energy points in the body, the ability to see the imbalances and to move things, right? All of those are universal knowledge. That's like universal knowledge. It's just there's certain cultures and lineages that have powers to put it in a way that is like, acupuncture talks about the energy flow, chi, just like in Hawaiian culture, it's mana. In Indian, it's prana. Those are all the same thing. And figure out what is actually yours. Like in the line that you have came from, you could package it as if like, this is my version of prana, but like owning yourself and who you are is an important piece of being able to translate the message of the universe in a way that really affects the community and affects the energy of the person. If it's coming from, a place where just like, I don't know, I was taught how to do this. I'm just going to do it. You may have the ability to move energy, but if it's not within you and your embodiment, it's not as powerful, I don't think.
Absolutely agree. And you're touching on, I think, our next conversation, that identity piece, that really getting to know yourself aspect of it. And I kind of want to circle back to something you were talking about when it came to being asked, can you teach me this so I can go do it in Hawaii? I think that really highlights how that has become such a norm. That is almost what sounds like the standard today when we think about the healing and the wellness space of like, hey, I want to do this. I can just go ask and get it, whatever weekend certification, whatever it is, really quick, and then go continue to do that when this is absolutely not supposed to be the case. Now, I think before we kind of wrap up this conversation, I want to touch a little bit on your story and how the pieces of it that led to you really becoming this expert, a lot of what I think of in working with nature to help unlock yourself. And beyond anything, I think you do a great job of honoring the land in the work that you do to allow it to truly support you and the people that you work with in their healing. That is a big missing link from a lot of people who do or brand nature work.
The origins of my work. Well, it's one of those things where it's like I never ever thought I was ever going to do my life's work like this, running a business or whatever, taking people outdoors, but it's definitely always outside. I was definitely always in the dirt, always like wanting to do the nature thing, National Geographic and, animal documentary. Like I was stuck on those things and, charting like a definite career. Like I am going to be studying nature. So I've always had that draw to it. And I think by way of just thinking that I had to get degrees in academia in it, like school was not all that great. I was a super average person in school. And then I started to struggle when it came time to like higher education, And so I thought the trajectory of going into like research and science was it for me, all the way to the point of like starting my master's degree, and then in the middle of it, bowing out and just being like, this ain't it. And I had been, part of that was like teaching young people. Somebody took a chance on me and hired me to work on a grant at Stanford University, building a outdoor education program from the ground up for struggling high school students. So putting all my heart and soul into that, like I designed that from the ground up and taught it and manage volunteers, everything. I did the whole nine for that. And I should have gotten honorary master's degree for that anyway, because that was like research. But I found that I was like a natural educator and that I can translate science concepts, like ecology concepts, and put them in the classroom for these high school students to grasp. And then that led to a lot of work in nonprofit, community-based organizations. And that experience was like, yeah, I thought this was going to be it for me. It was, everything in community, doing the things I was like, went to school for. But the nonprofit industry just it broke me. Like, laid off multiple times. Just the climb to leadership was not designed for us. And I struggled through a lot of that. And I had to do a lot of soul searching around my place in life. And so by that time, it had been almost like 10 years in nonprofit work, trying to climb in leadership and realizing that there actually wasn't space for me. And if I did want to continue, I'd be in an even deeper like uphill battle against it. So with the amount of network that I had already created in those many years, somebody had said, well, you've managed organizations and staff, like maybe you want to think about coaching. There's a certification program happening and you could just give it a try for a weekend and you could make money off of that. Like you could start, charging for that now, and so I didn't really know exactly what coaching was. I've received like maybe 1 or 2 sessions as a professional, but knowing the formal practice of a professional coach, I was like, I was already doing that with my staff. So now I bought in and said, well, I want to know the whole thing. I want to have the structure. Like, how does this go down? How can I create this as a pathway for me to continue my work? And at the same time, through all of those milestones and really, really challenging parts of my life, I had a spiritual mentor. Because if you talk about, some of my work was in probation department sites like juvenile justice facilities and things like that, jails, youth jails. Like I needed a therapist, like I really needed, but it wasn't enough for me. So I asked my therapist to recommend a spiritual mentor, and blending, like, I need to figure out my life, like how to make a living and raise my family. I've been traumatized by all of this professional life experience and career stuff, but I know people and I know stuff, and I'm having these crazy, vivid, lucid dreams that I feel like somebody's communicating to me. And that's where my spiritual mentor came in and worked with me on having to translate what those messages were for me. And so at the moment of me really needing to figure out how this is going to show up in real life and be a sustainer, my spiritual mentor was sitting in front of me, like in session. She's like, what's happening in your mind right now? I could see something. And I was like, I didn't know what she was talking about. I was like, I'm not really thinking about much right now. I'm just like sitting here taking in what we're talking about. And then sort of blend of, that's so interesting. She's texting me now.
Wait, your spiritual mentor?
Yeah. And we have not talked in years.
Look at this
That's crazy.
alignment.
Right? I'm gonna have to look at that text. Anyway, like she said to me, like, you could figure this out. We're gonna do it. Like she guided me through that whole thing. Like, you love nature, you're doing coaching, what da 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 da. And then she said, okay, we're gonna do this thing. I used to do this thing with my clients, and we would sit outside and have session, and then I would tell them to interpret nature and connected to their intention, right? She's like, we're going to do this and we're going to do a group. We're going to test out this model of like getting people who have trauma to process to like do this thing. She said, you're going to watch me do this for several groups and then you're going to make it your own. And I was like, okay. You know, when you work with an elder, sometimes like they just throw you into things and you have to just be like, okay, fine. Like, I'm open. Like, just, I need to figure this out. Whatever. Let's go. And that really became sort of like the process. And I think it was around 2017, 2018, where it was her and I doing healing hikes together. Actually, it was like 2016 because I remember that the first time I was challenged to not call her and do hike with a group was the 2016 election results. It was like that response that we had to the first presidency of Trump. Like everybody was like, what the heck? You know, and so I was like, I can't text like I can't like get my mentor to do this. So let me just like text. I've seen her do it several times. Let me just text a bunch of friends who live close by and go up the park, up the hill from the neighborhood and see if they want to do a sunrise healing hike so that we could kind of like let a lot of this like anxiety and fear kind of process through in nature. And I remember the closing circle for that when we ended. It was that moment where I was like, these people were saying like, I feel lighter. I remember who I am in a sense, you know, at the end. And I was just like, oh, this is it. Like, I can do this. I think this is the process. Like, I think I landed it. Like, let me just keep doing it. And so it has been a journey. Been doing this for 9 years, you know, opened up my business the same year that happened, 2016, and was really doing the work consistently and then crafting really the framework and the brand of what nature really is about, like how it is something that we already have. Like we don't have to necessarily go into wilderness to find its effects, right? Like we are part of it. So it was almost like I was prepared to like do it through the pandemic because the message was already there. We can access this any time. It's just you do have to have an intentional container.
Thank you so much for sharing. And what a giggle I just got when your mentor that worked with you like 10 years ago, you haven't talked in the past few years, just drops you a message. You know, I don't believe in coincidences, and I know you don't either. But
I know.
I want to thank you so much for your time on this episode, sharing your wisdom, your experience, and just like not being afraid to just say what's on your heart and mind. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. So much gratitude to you, whatever. But if there are any closing remarks you want to do, please feel free.
I think that it's important for us to be with each other and support each other. It's not like I'm not saying it in a way that's like judging whether the pop-up healings are invalid or not. Hold your gifts and your practice with sacredness. And if that means pulling back and really getting creative on how you share your gifts, then do that, because you're worth paying attention to how your power can show up in its fullest form, right? We can't bring ourselves to this in a way that doesn't honor how important and how unique it's come to you. Your gifts were a special like offering that was passed down to you to be able to create an impact in this world. And so figure out what it is in its essence versus fitting it into a modality that is marketed out there. Like, I don't have a name for what I do. I just say healing hikes, and I'm not going to trademark that. I am not going to, like, that is not useful for anybody, but I still do what I do. It's still accessible to people. It's, people ask me if it's forest therapy. I'm like, I don't know, maybe. I don't do forest therapy. I do this. And so it's okay not to have a name for it. It's just speak to your story and who you are and how you came to be crossing paths with the people. This is required for us to be creative in the modern contemporary times to bring our healing abilities out, if that's who we are.
I love how you said that. And if that's who we are, we do not have to force it. Thank you so much right now. And thank you all for listening. And don't forget, y'all, it's okay to just shut up and heal. All right. Until next time.